Welcome to Blind Shovel, an arts and music podcast. Today I had the pleasure of interviewing Armenian illustrator, graphic novelist, and animator Roman Muradov. Despite his best efforts, he always brings a smile to my face. Enjoy.
Hello.
What's up, Roman?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not sure if I'm talking into the phone or the microphone. Is this fine?
Yeah, you sound very good.
Okay, great. So it is going into the headphones.
Yeah, it's all good.
All right.
So you're in Brooklyn, huh?
I am, yeah.
When did that happen?
About 2 years ago.
Well, it's been some time the last time we met or saw each other. That's probably like a decade? No, it can't be a decade.
Oh, God, no.
But,
It feels
yeah, how'd you end up there? 2 years ago. How was it like COVID? You moved there during COVID.
Yeah. I mean, everyone was doing that for some reason, and I was one of them people. San Francisco was a bit on fire, and that seemed like a good reason to take advantage of the lower than usual rent, etc.
So how long were you in the Bay in the end?
Oh, God. Too long. More than a decade. Yeah. How about you?
How long was I in the Bay? I was in the Bay for like 4 or 5 years, and then I learned my lesson.
Amount of time.
Yeah, I learned my lesson. I didn't need more than that. I should have learned quicker, but
Well, I didn't know. I didn't know it needs to be there. It was just so easy for me to be there because of the Notion office, which I use as my private studio. Not private, but extremely shared studio. So I lived just so cheaply, and I was probably the thriftiest person in San Francisco, which is why I managed to live there so long. But had I not had this, I would have been forced to leave much sooner.
And where did you live before?
Moscow, Russia, and then before, originally in Baku, USSR, or Azerbaijan as it is now known.
So you went straight from Moscow to the to the Bay Area. There's something funny about that to me.
Yeah,
such a contrast. I imagine. I know nothing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's a complete opposite. Like, what's the opposite of anything?
Well, yes, it's quite hard to tell, right. But it must be different, no?
Yeah, extremely. I mean, I haven't really changed at all. So my personality has not adapted to the American, way of living or talking or anything.
Well, there's many American ways of speaking, and that's why I had to leave, because I am from New Jersey.
Oh, yeah.
And I ended up back in New Jersey, and I think it's mostly related to just the way people communicate and their and maybe their values in some sense, but
what are the Jersey values?
Well,
more sarcastic than I intended it.
I don't know if it's values in a sense.
Values.
It's just a way of. I don't know. It could be that I have my roots here. My whole family's here. There's people I can speak frankly to, but in general, I speak frankly. So I feel. Yeah, I always felt
an extremely frank man.
In California, I do not find that to be common or acceptable.
Well, yeah, I mean that's exactly what I'm talking about. That's the cultural shift that I never adapted to. I mean, Russia is an extremely unfriendly place. But if you do manage to make a friend, that's a lot, and that friend will probably be with you to the end. In California, it's so easy to make friends, but then they're not really there.
Yeah. I prefer the former.
Hard earned, yeah.
It is earned. That's
it is
how
earned. It should be,
There's an assumption of friendship in California I don't like. Like, there's this man, I won't speak his name, but he takes it upon himself to hug everyone he meets, even if he doesn't know them.
What a bastard.
And he, not uncoincidentally, lives in Los Angeles. It's just different.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the hugging thing has always driven me a bit crazy. I'm not too fond of physical contact with strangers. It just feels a bit presumptuous and much.
Yeah, I mean, at least you're explicitly exotic, in that context. In California, it's like you have an accent. You're from somewhere different. Yeah. I'm just from New Jersey, but so I feel like you probably got more leeway with that in terms of what you could get away with.
Definitely. Well, up to a point and maybe earlier, but I think now no one wants to talk to anyone from Russia, which is fair enough.
True? Is that true?
Well, I don't know. No,
I would suspect you get really stupid questions more than not.
Yeah. I remember someone asked me, like, so what do you guys think about Stalin?
Well, yeah, only someone who's not from Russia is kind of mulling that over, especially, people in the Bay Area might be, really playing with that.
Actually, before Stalin became cool in the young circles, which is...
He's cool again.
Fascinating thing to happen.
Yeah, he's cool.
People are rewriting history everywhere all the time.
It's ridiculous. You know what he is? He's handsome. He's certainly handsome.
Pretty hot. Yeah, I mean, young Stalin is such a hottie.
Yes.
Yeah, that book cover. You know what I'm talking about?
No, I do know young Stalin though, and he's very attractive.
There was a book called Young Stalin, and when that cover came out, everyone was just start creaming themselves over him. And then people were like, well,
maybe he was a good guy. That's
a very nice man, but that's a challenging ethical question. Like,
I don't think it is.
You think it's totally fine to objectify Stalin? I think so.
I think in this instance, yeah.
I think that's the act of real resistance is reducing him to just a fuck toy. It is 100% what he would not have wanted, and therefore,
I'm sure he didn't care. He had other things on his mind, I believe. So what does it mean to be, so like if you live in Brooklyn, right? I don't think, I mean, is it any better than the Bay? I mean, it's
objectively worse.
You went from these bubbles they're just bubbles of different kinds of, but they're kind of in the same vein, I assume, right?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say an expectation, more rather than I would have a hope that people are a bit cooler here, but they're not. They just put on different clothes.
They moved from the Bay and put on different clothes. That's what happened.
Yeah.
It's the same people.
Well, it really is. I haven't really... Well, that's not true. I've met some nice people. But... Yeah, I mean, I'm too old to buy into some kind of New York coolness. I think but also, I don't think I ever did buy into that when I was in my 20s. I was always irritated by these people. Now they're just getting younger and younger, and I'm getting older and older and more irrelevant. And it's probably not going to get any better.
You should celebrate that irrelevance. It's true freedom.
Honestly, yes.
Yeah.
You feel that? Well, how old are you?
Well, I like that subtle jab.
Well, there's no jab, it's a compliment.
I'm 33, but I do celebrate that
Okay.
irrelevance. I feel that even subconsciously in my 20s, I must have been more aware of the waters I was swimming in. But now I'm
Right.
around I love the kind of communal feeling of seeing an old person, my nieces and nephews, young children. I think
yes.
that's important, and that's what's severely missing when you do live in these bubbles of the Bay Area.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one thing that I do much prefer about New York. There is definitely a much greater diversity of people. It's not, just a city for 20-year-old tech bros. But there's plenty of those. And it is nice to see all the families and all the, different people. And no matter how ridiculous people dress and how much certain trends can irritate me, it's still kind of heartwarming to see that display.
I think it is a heartwarming city.
Yeah,
I think it's a diverse city,
I do like that.
I really do think it's diverse.
Yeah, no, definitely.
But in respect to what age did you move from Russia?
I think I was 23, maybe.
And if I recall correctly, you were an engineer?
Yeah.
Is that why you have a good work ethic? You have the work ethic of a Russian engineer.
I don't know what you're talking about. First of all, I was a terrible engineer. I had no work ethic. I had no future in engineering. I would have 100% gotten fired pretty soon. I was just completely slacking off. First of all, I wasn't really an engineer. I wasn't really allowed any proper work. I was just translating tag documents. So it's, how many cylinders does some turbine. This is the dullest shit you can possibly imagine. I remember I was translating some document, and then I would go and around page 6, I realized that I have already translated it. And they're all just so dull and so similar. I translated one thing, and then I accidentally opened the same file and started over, and I didn't even notice that I had done that. I think that was the moment where what the fuck am I doing with my life?
How did you end up making that decision to be studying engineering? Sorry.
Well, I didn't really make that decision. My father sort of firmly suggested that I do that. I wanted to be a translator when I was a youngin', but I just didn't really have any idea of where or why, and I didn't have any backbone. I wasn't really a good reader. I knew I had an interest in language, but I don't think I would have been able to enter one of them proper universities. Certainly would have never been able to enter a Russian art school, because the drawing skill they require something that I will never have.
Really?
Yeah, you have to copy all the sculptures and stuff like that.
Interesting.
I still have no idea how to draw a person.
Yeah, you know how to draw shapes. You have a good sense of shapes.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, it's kind of abstract, right?
I relate to that. I don't know how to draw humanity, the kind of warmth of a soul, the spirit of someone. It's pretty hard for me to capture that.
Well, because it doesn't exist. I mean, come on. There's no humanity.
Maybe not anymore. Maybe not anymore. Is that where you... so I've always wondered about is it a performative nihilism, or is it a genuine? Is it genuine?
First of all, I don't think it's nihilism. I think
sure, that's a strong word.
A lazy term that I'm not accusing you, but this has been leveled at me very often. I think it's kind of a lazy term when people sort of say, "Oh, you're so dark and gloomy," but I don't think of myself as a particularly depressing person. Although I seem to have a great capacity for making people depressed. When I do like a little lecture or something,
Really?
people kind of start
That's the
looking
result.
sour. Yeah. Well, I tend to be able to swing it back. I think I'm very honest, like, about the illustration industry and working as an artist, and how unfair and grueling it can be. But I don't know. I think it's just honest, and like I first of all, I'm well, okay. I'm not a happy person. That's ridiculous. But I'm a big fan of. I don't know where I'm going with this.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I lost my train of thought.
You're a fan of. You're not a happy person. You're depressing. What else?
This is going terribly.
If it's honest, it's honest.
Well, yeah. I mean,
I will say there's a lightness to your depression. That's why it feels performative to me, in the sense that a true depressive, I mean, they bring you into a black hole that you can't escape. But
I can take it there.
yeah. Well,
no, I think it's performative lightness, if anything. The despair is
fair enough.
Really fucking there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, no, I mean, I really struggle with just wanting to live at all. And the older I get, the worse it is. Like, I just really don't want to live at all.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, what I was saying is a big fan of is I'm a big fan. I wanted to say I'm a big fan of art, and then I thought, God, that sounds awful. Of course you are. And you're like a swimmer being like, I love water. Just
I don't think you haven't earned the right to die yet. I think.
Well, I don't think it's up to you to decide.
I think I can. I have some say in this.
But also, I quite like that. I mean, when I was in my 20s, I would think that honestly. I'll be like, well, I'll finish this book, and then we'll see if things don't improve. And that's such a dumbass male approach to solving your mental issues. And be like, maybe I'll publish a book, and then I'll be fine again. Well, I guess what? Nothing will change. You'll be probably more depressed because now there's people, slagging it off online. But no, I think art is like the only thing that really redeems this garbage heap of living. I mean, it's not the only thing. There's also love and cats. Three things: art, love, cats. Sometimes they can intersect, the trifecta of good life.
It's funny. I feel that people who value love are often depressed. And I do believe culturally we overvalue love, and that's a complicated word, but
well, I mean it in a really broad. I don't mean romantic love necessarily.
Okay, because I think that's the disease that we live under. Is that's the unifying thing, that we need.
That's how it would probably manifest itself for most of us, but it doesn't have to. But also, if you're in the relationship, that's not romantic love anymore after a couple of years.
No, that's when you should start,
that's the real thing.
At a certain point I realized that spark and catalyst of romantic love is in the service of something greater if you want to have children, and you better start making children, because otherwise it's just it doesn't make sense. And I think things need to make pragmatic sense even when love is involved. In fact, when talking about art, I like the most unromantic views of it typically, like, for instance, I don't know why do you make art? Like, you seem very inspired by animation at the moment, but are you just possessed by some spirit, or do you feel, because for me, by making art, I felt a transcendent force, which later led me back to God in some sense. But I know this isn't the result for a lot of people who make art, but something about that process put me in touch with something. I was raised Roman Catholic, so that's my symbol structure. I don't know, what is it, like Russian Orthodox that you would have been raised?
Yeah.
So
well,
obviously,
Armenian Orthodox, but it's the same general idea.
I don't. Okay, but obviously that's not important to you in this equation, right?
Well, it's hard to say. I'm very agnostic in that. I mean, there's no difference between being like evangelical and being atheist. It's the same kind of. I'm kind of like, and again, like this is how I feel about the rest of it. Like instead of nihilist, I would kind of use the word agnostic towards pretty much everything. Like I just don't see it as a pressing question, but I've always been really jealous of people who can have that sort of connection. I mean, what you say makes so much sense for your work, because you can really feel it, that that energy is not just carefully planned out design. I mean, it obviously is that, but there's something that's really primal about your work, which I don't think I have access to that.
You have well, thank you for that, but you have it's not just intellectual, but there's somehow you've manifested that feeling of intellectualism visually. In other words, the lines to me are smart. It all is very smart, and I don't mean that dismissively. Yeah. I certainly could, because there's some.
I would say dismissively. I mean, I really can't stand cleverness in my own work, and I find it exhausting. I mean, I cannot stand all my old work, but even like. I mean, nowadays it's kind of better because I feel like I'm much more honest with myself, and I don't really do like performative pretty illustration with clever little shapes and whatever. I just like draw whatever I want. But I think,
are you as well read as you look? Because a lot of the work exudes a well readness, or at least a European sophistication. Obviously, the one book's about Duchamp. And
I think I'm well read for cartoonist.
Okay, fair. That's fair.
Most of them are sort of complete idiots, but they would usually have like one book that they read 20 times. That's something I've noticed, that every cartoonist has like one book there.
What book? What book is that? Give me one book, because I don't know many that read anymore.
I don't know. I remember someone told me it's like a Knut Hamsun's last novel on Something Soil, which I never read. I think that's when he went like full Nazi, which is interesting. Anyway.
Yeah, now you're intriguing me. I don't know who Kim Thompson is. Is that a cartoonist or a writer?
No, Knut Hamsun.
Oh.
The guy.
I don't know what that
hunger. Anyway, I think, I mean, I read a fair amount. But, I think it's not really part of my identity or something in the way that people sometimes imagine it is. But I think it is, I'm a compulsive reader in that I read kind of everything and I read into everything. So, like, I read Yelp reviews and I would sort of analyze the structure, and I would pick on all the weird turns of phrases.
You're neurotic.
No, well, yes, obviously. But I just, I have a fascination with language, and I've always had that. Even before I started writing or doing anything creative, I would get obsessed about certain turns of phrases, how one person might say it this way, another. And I think, language is one of those things that do make me love humanity a little bit, because it's just such an incredible thing that just comes out of our mouths without any control or thought or anything. It just sort of happens.
It isn't clear to me how we made language, or language was arrived at. I don't think we make things for the most part. I think I don't know. They just arise.
Well, again, they're going back to nihilism. I really have no amount of faith in free will.
Oh, okay.
And people go, "Wow, that's kind of like this. What is it?" I don't think it is, because I think it's just kind of admitting that you are an animal that has evolved in quite confusing ways, and part of that is making you believe that you have thoughts and you sort of form sentences, and then you do actions because you thought of something. But like, all of this is just complete fucking chaos. I mean, there's been so many studies that show that people act before they think, and what we consider our decisions or opinions and whatnot, they're so fickle, and they can be easily manipulated by something as simple as weather, you know?
Yes, I've heard this claim, this particular study. I don't think it proves what they purport it to prove, but science plays that trick quite often. I'm all in for free will. I'm mostly pragmatic in the sense of, if it seems that you have free will and it seems that you make decisions, then you do. In a sense, I don't know how you embody a deterministic perspective, whether it's a religious determinism, I think that would be Calvinism, or a more materialist one in which you're just, cue balls bouncing off of each other. I try not to embody philosophies or ideas I can't enact. And that saved me a lot of time and definitely pushed me away from Zen, for instance. Like, I just don't think I'm humble enough to be like, all right, I'm from a Christian culture. I was raised Roman Catholic. That's basically all I can work with. I'm never going to be able to understand the complexity of Buddhism or Hinduism without being like marinated in that culture for decades or your entire life. I think there's like a hubris to being like, I could just put on this.
Oh, yeah.
And first of all, then you get into this is what I believe is almost like a scientific framework of, within myself, I have the evidence that I think this thing is true, which isn't really what belief is to me. Belief is more what you're doing. So that's a bit of a ramble,
Right.
but like, I feel like that's where intellectualism can become a problem, and especially when you identify it as like a high schooler. I don't know what high school is, but you know what I mean. There's like an identity. There's an identity that you try to latch onto.
Well, yeah, I think I'm very interested in Zen, but again, like you said, it does feel like an insurmountable. I mean, where do you even begin? And there's so many Western people who have written, kind of developed it and written their own interpretation. I mean, I'm currently sort of reading a lot of Viktor Pelevin, a Russian novelist, who has like a weird sort of Soviet Zen.
I like the sound of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's very odd, but it feels very warm and humane, and sort of funny and depressing, like all the things that are relevant to me. And I never read him when I was in Russia because he was one of them popular writers, and I was idiot snob. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I was like, well,
are you still or no?
Not. I hope not, but I imagine I will. It's been the same for me through my life. If I look back at everything I thought and said a year ago, I just feel like cringe, as the kids say. I just want to apologize for everything. But I don't know. I feel like I'm all right now.
Is that true of your work as well, in the sense
of
you look back and I have the opposite. I look back and the further it is, the more it feels like it wasn't me, and I can develop a relationship with the work that isn't so what would you say, like burdened. It's just like, it's just another book, and
I mean,
that takes like a decade for me.
I'm really frustrated with myself because I know that I'm capable of great humor and lightness, and unfortunately, I very rarely allow myself to express it.
In the work, or in just like living?
Mostly in my work. And then people who know me and sort of deign to hang out with me, they would occasionally be like, "Wow, you're much funnier than what you kind of allow yourself." And that's been changing lately. I think a lot of it was, I don't know what it was. It's a kind of a combination of various bad habits. I mean, the book I just finished is just so fucking depressing.
What book is that?
Well, it will come out next year in France, probably nowhere else. But that book is entirely about suicide, and it's kind of me like processing all these very, very dark thoughts.
So great for a French publisher.
Right, yeah.
in some ways.
It's also, I think it's funny, but I don't know what people will think. I think it's entirely possible that people will be like, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? He thinks it's a something that you can sort of write jokes about. I'm like, yeah.
Of course you can, this is...
that really is the one thing that I absolutely did inherit from Russia, but also from my parents, and the whole like Armenian thing is when you're sort of systematically oppressed, or when you're yourself depressed, when you don't want to live, like there's no other place you can really turn to other than humor,
Right.
For me, and I guess like that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, was that very banal sounding thing I said about love, cats, and art. To me, like that, and to that I can also add humor, because it sometimes is part of art, sometimes isn't. But to me, that is kind of like, it's really a coping mechanism in a way. I really like. I'm not a big fan of that whole like artist therapy thing, but
nor am I.
But I feel like when I lose the humor, when I stop sort of making fun of myself and the world and everything else, not in a mean way, but just like processing it, like trying to find the humor. When I don't see it, like that's when I really, really spiral, and that's when I feel like, well, there's just nothing.
Well, the gravest sin might be humorlessness. And that's it's a plague amongst
also,
people.
It completely affects me physically. Like, I've lost my sense of smell and taste a long time ago, and then when I get when it gets really bad, like my whole body kind of shuts down. Like my stomach just starts hurting 24/7. I can barely walk, or it's like it's a very physical. I don't know how to even call it, but it's.
You're speaking
like
literally.
Your body, yeah, completely literal. It's not just like I'm being sad. Just like my body sort of decides to give up.
So you were losing taste and smell before COVID.
Oh yeah.
You're way ahead of it.
I guess. The OG sufferer.
So I see that on this Instagram, you gave it up.
Yes,
which I think is a good idea.
It to the gods of nothingness.
Yeah, exactly. But what was that doing to you? Was that affecting the way you were working, or just increasing your depression of participating in social media?
Yeah, I mean, probably nothing different from what everyone else feels these days. But there's something about the possibility, even if you don't look at it, of your work being quantified in some way or another. Mm-hmm. That's just so fucking upsetting to me. You
mean quantified in almost like
likes, shares, comments, whatever.
Okay, yeah.
In fact, the thing that really tipped me off and made me delete it was making a comic that was very popular, and it like blew up, and everyone was like, "Oh my god, you're so funny," blah blah blah. Mm-hmm. And then I started working on something else, and in the back of my mind, I still thought like, well, but would it be as funny as this one? Or, you can't help but sort of consider, like, will people like this after that? And for a long time, I kind of like prided myself on being very contrarian, and I would do something that people like, and then I'd be like, oh, now I'm going to do the opposite of that. But then you think, well, you're just being an idiot, and you're still guided by other people's opinions.
Yeah, you're reacting.
Well, right. And like, so, and again, this has been the same thing I've been thinking about for the last, I don't know, a couple of years. It's like, why the hell am I making art? And it felt scary to not get any of that approval and validation. But I felt like I have to face this nothingness, just like put myself on a desert island and see if I want to keep drawing.
Yeah, I mean, well, is that what caused the shift to animation for the moment? Just something new?
Yeah, I think initially it was my hand therapist. I was having a lot of pain in my hand after drawing the Duchamp book, because it's like very inky and expressive. And the doctor was like, you shouldn't be drawing because you have hypermobility. That's just like not good for you. Do you want to do something else? There's nothing else I can do. But I thought, I've always been curious about Blender, and then 2.8, the kind of later version, came out at the time, and people were saying that it's much more accessible nowadays. So I bought like a vertical mouse that's ergonomic, and I thought, okay, maybe I'll do that now. And I didn't completely stop drawing, but it's been a nice kind of different thing I can put my hand on that doesn't hurt as much.
Yeah, literally.
But then, of course, I got kind of sucked into it, and it's a very different mindset, I find. Have you ever tried it?
Blender or animation?
I guess both.
I'm actually about to learn Blender for very different reasons, because now I do fabrication work, and Blender is quite good for that. But animation, I've done a couple of different experiments. One was like a music video, so that was pretty straightforward. But I do enjoy animation. When I was little, I thought I wanted to be one, but in the final assessment, and even in the early assessment, it was pretty clear that
what's the final assessment?
That kind of I mean, I obviously have a work ethic, but I don't have it in that way, that kind of grueling sitting and just animating. And the payoff is
5 seconds.
Which is, it's beautiful. Like I love Miyazaki. I like early Disney. I love a lot of animation. It's like really maybe the peak medium for me and what I'm interested in. But comics solve that problem slightly. And I also think comics can obviously do things that animation can't. But what I like about your animation is it does things that I wouldn't associate with animation. It's kind of a hybrid. Feels like a comic to me, the way the framing occurs, the panels. And you can tell, I mean, some of the best animation outside of those giants like Miyazaki, I do think it's usually made by people who aren't primarily animators, because animation school makes just like the most bland, tasteless cogs,
Yeah. I mean, the whole
go ahead.
And it's all of them. People kind of go on about CalArts being this like soulless machine, but there's hardly a school that doesn't have like a style that it imprints on everyone, like Goblins in France.
The great
school. Seen as this more like sophisticated, blah, blah, blah. But I don't know, all their graduation films kind of have the same general vibe, and the story is always the same for some reason. But I think it's kind of like that weight of legacy that people work under. And when you're kind of someone like me who has zero stakes, like I know, well, first of all, I've never made any money from my work, from my personal work. So if I do Blender, that's just like, it's got to be fun. Of course, it isn't when you're like 40 hours into some scene and blah, blah, blah. But initially it's fun.
Yeah, fun isn't the word. It's a release. It's a release.
I find it, I mean, people kind of always expect me to have some sort of engineering twist to my art process, and I don't really have that, to be honest. But I think Blender is sort of the closest to that, because it's very analytical. You have to plan, although I don't do that at all, and I try to improvise as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just so different. It feels like playing with like bricks or Legos or something. But it's like some kind of mad Lego set where you can do anything. You can make the blocks like bubble and do your bidding.
Do you still make physical work, right? You still draw in a sketchbook. Do you try to maintain that as, no, that's just off the table now?
Yeah, I mean, I really should. Yeah, I want to. I don't really know why I stopped doing that. I kind of became obsessed with Procreate, the iPad.
No, yeah, I never used it.
Oh, it's great. So I got obsessed with making brushes in it. I just wanted to find a way to work digitally that doesn't feel bad.
Right.
And I managed to make some brushes that are like a little bit weird and wobbly and give you unexpected results. And I feel like, I don't really see people taking advantage of it as much as I think they should. It's like when people use digital, it all looks like just a cleaner version of what they would do on paper.
Right. Which is a problem. You have to like reverse engineer the intimacy and humanness of the thing.
Yeah. Or when people sometimes go for like an extremely digital look which is its own thing. But I kind of wanted to have like an analog feel to digital tools. So not emulate reality, but sort of use that feeling of like screen printing and drawing and have that in like a 3D space. And I mean, that's like when I started doing Blender, and I'm still figuring it out. Like I'm really not, I don't feel like what I have done so far is indicative of my animation style. I think it's still like in its baby steps.
Mm-hmm.
But people immediately started telling me that, well, it's crazy that it still looks and feels exactly like your work, even though it's a completely different medium. I didn't really see that at all. I thought I'm just like doing crap work, but I think it still translates the aesthetics. Like I find different ways to have the same rhythm. The humor translates in different ways. Like timing becomes a thing that's completely absent in comics. Well, not completely, but it's much more controlled in animation.
Yeah, and you have Dory as well.
Oh yeah. I mean,
which is a great union. I don't know if you've met him. Have you met him in person?
I have, but not much. Sort of Niv would be dominating the conversation. And Dory is very sweet and sort of a little shy, so I never really had much in-person conversation with him, and I still haven't. Like we've collaborated so many times, and there's part of me that sort of likes that.
Yeah, that's what he said. He likes that kind of division, and I think I understand, because you either need to go full on intimately into a collaboration or maintain that division of labor.
I think it's good, and I also I try to give him as much space to do his own thing as possible, because he's a brilliant musician, and I want it to be like a true collaboration. I think the last thing we did, I definitely kind of like annoyed him way too much with my specific
art directing.
Well, like, this section should sound like a violin in a washing machine, and I would be like, well, this should be like, there's a sock on, and it's blowing in the wind.
Mm-hmm.
Not literally, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand music at all. I have like no hearing. I have like a really barbaric attitude towards music. Like, I just wanted to do something to my soul that doesn't exist,
I understand. Yeah.
I don't understand it with the same intricacy as I apply to language and drawings. It's very mysterious to me, and what he does is kind of shocking how fast he makes it and how good it is.
Yeah, no, it's a perfect union.
Yeah, it's like, I remember Marcus Smith from The Fall. He was talking about John Peel, and they did like the most Peel sessions that any other band has done. And when Peel died, they sort of called him in for an interview, and he sort of said that deranged, and he said something like, "Well, we were never friends. It's better this way." And people were like, "Well, that's fucking crazy." He's like, he was not friends with the guy who promoted his band for like 40 years. Went out of his way to have all these sessions. But like, I think that's kind of good. Like, he understood that their relationship is based on this sort of artistic appreciation. Like, sort of diluting it with all your disgusting human shit is not such a good idea sometimes.
Yes. Some people, it's like chemicals. Maybe there's just like, they can't mix, or they can mix in a very specific way.
Yeah.
Whereas like Neve and I, it's inseparable from our human relationship. But I understand for most people, this would be a very bad idea, but that's kind of how I live my life. Like, I work with my brother. I don't really draw those divisions. I don't believe in going to a therapist. Because I believe in like, I don't want to, in some sense, objectify a human to just have to hear me. I want relationships that are bi-directional and acting as therapy, if that makes sense.
Right.
Also, I'm just an Italian American.
That's a very Russian way. Every time I talk to my mother about, sending my parents to therapy, and they could certainly use that. She would be like, "Well, back in our day, we would just sit with the girls in the kitchen until 3 a.m. and talk it all out, and we didn't need your therapist."
A lot of people, it's like the world has changed, and admittedly,
no one does this anymore.
Yeah, exactly. There is no kitchen. There's no 3 a.m. There's nothing left.
Right. Yeah. I can't.
You go to therapist?
Not anymore. Yeah. After I moved, my last one was just so pointless. He did some. He definitely helped, but it was not fun. Or
it was not fun. It was not entertaining enough.
Well, I always felt annoyed when he would laugh at everything I said. And I think that's what a lot of people get out of it. They sort of get validation for their clips and whatever.
So you have the same therapist that you hope to have with your comics. It's kind of a divulgence that you hope people laugh.
My default mode, I mean, I'm the same with myself. I talk to myself all the time. I make myself laugh. It's a very healthy relationship, I think.
With yourself, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that part of it.
And what is your relationship to France? Do you speak French? Do you just like French things? Is that why you're getting things publishing? You hate it.
Well, I mean, I kind of do. I'm like a recovered Francophile, I think.
Okay.
I was definitely deeply in love with French bande dessinée. Definitely not so much traditional French comics that I find pretty awful. I mean, they're like not that much better than Marvel and DC. People sort of have this idea that they're more sophisticated, but no, it's the same like dudes with guns. Anyway, But
Mobius
like,
being the peak of that.
Right. I mean, he really like kicked it off into a different direction.
Yeah.
But he also did do dudes with guns. He did kind of everything.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Yeah. People like Christoph Blanc and Gus Goffa and Bluch, certainly, they were huge influence. There's no question there. I was definitely obsessed with Flaubert, Georges Perec, and the Oulipo. I
was going to say, Oulipo, like your animations remind me of that restraint, that kind of game.
Yeah.
Where there's a logic.
Yeah, I have absolutely like absorbed that into my DNA. I pretty much never use like strict formal constraints, but there's always something. Like with Duchamp, with that book, I decided, I don't remember, pretty early on that the protagonist, that is Marcel Duchamp, will not speak. And then I kind of build the whole thing on that. Like, well, how can you write a story about someone without him having any say in it? And I thought, well, so the narrator is kind of crazy. And he's like this exaggerated version of sort of everything I hate about myself, like a really anal art historian. I don't really know who he is, but so he kind of like writes himself into a corner and says, well, since we don't know anything about this time in Duchamp's life, then he won't be able to speak and blah blah blah. And the idea was like to create really uncomfortable conditions for writing a book, and that is something that I still do a lot. Like I always want to feel uncomfortable. As soon as you feel confident and you know what you're doing, that's when you need to stop, I feel.
So you have that's like a heroic metric, I feel. There's something heroic about that, where it's constantly
I'm like a
going into the forest.
Yeah.
You're close to one. Well, that's a good visual image.
That are like big fucking deal,
So like,
there's a lot of firefighters, but there's only one Roman.
You.
So,
that's right. Do you speak French?
I do not. I tried to learn it, I think 3 times. I just find it unbearable. I find it like such an annoying language.
I'm in the thing, and I understand.
Oh, really? Why?
Because my fiance is French.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear about it.
Yeah. It's okay. But yes, it's difficult. I don't know any other language. You know another language, at least one, right? Russian.
Yeah.
English.
I have like a weird relationship with language in general. It's very, very, very emotional. I don't really use language much for communication. I think that's always been like, even as a child, I would get fixated on like words and the sounds, and there's like certain words that would really make me uncomfortable. And then a lot of it is like quite difficult baggage from people in Russia being not particularly nice to me, because we were refugees in the 90s in Russia. It was a pretty brutal time. But anyway,
frankly, I don't know about that dynamic very well, the Armenian-Russian dynamic. So are you Armenian? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
100%. I started getting ear hairs. You know that? Yeah. Not on the inside, but on the outside.
No, I don't have it
yet. What the hell? I have like 2-inch long ear hairs. I never thought that's even an option.
What does that matter? You don't like it?
I have hairy ears.
It's believable.
I love it. Yeah, I think it's. I think it's a bit weird because I don't really have any other prominent Armenian hair spots. Like my DNA distribution glitched somewhere around the ears. Like I don't have a unibrow, I don't have chest hair, I don't have all these things that people associate
with the ears. Yeah,
but the ears are going absolutely apeshit. So I've been like shaving my ears. which is a pretty weird feeling. I'll tell you that much. You don't like go to the barber and be like,
of course, not here, not here at least.
In Armenia, it's like the only reason people go to the barber.
When's the last time you've been to Russia or Armenia?
Russia, I think a couple years ago. Really don't know when will be next time. Possibly never.
Is your family there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's difficult. It's been like a source of near constant,
I'm sure,
grief and despair. Yeah. Armenia, I've only been there once, so I don't really have any cultural connection there, to be honest. So my father has, because he's of the right age to be sort of nostalgic for homeland and all that.
Yeah.
I'm, the requisite 10 years of exile have passed, so I'm now nostalgic about Russia, but again, not Russia, but the Russian language. So when I moved, it wasn't really a decision, but I just kind of stopped speaking Russian at all.
Yeah.
Only with my parents, and that's mainly just sort of nodding and saying, yeah. So I would only read in English. I just kind of completely severed myself. And then, 10 years later, I suddenly... someone asked me to write something in Russian, and I did, and it was so easy. I somehow felt like I just discovered this whole new language that has always been in me. And I feel just really emotional about it.
Really?
Yeah. Just, I don't know. I've been reading almost exclusively in Russian lately, because you want something nice that's Russian to like counterbalance all the horror.
You want the high culture.
Right. Or just humane. And it's just been so strange to rediscover all these things and to kind of find these little turns of phrases that are completely untranslatable. And, it feels like, it doesn't feel like language, like words, like something that can be written and deciphered. It feels like something that's so much deeper and something that's more human than our human bodies.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You think you'll die in Russia? Do you want to die in Russia?
I want to die anywhere.
You don't even care. You don't even care about where you die. I feel like people should really care about where they want to die,
I think one thing I do care is that I do want to be, well, doesn't sound good, but I want to be donated to a necrophile after I die. Yeah.
You want to be loved?
Well, not really the word I would look for here. I just feel like I always felt that necrophiles kind of have a bad rap, among all the files.
Well, quite the group.
Well, it's just like it's really not the worst thing,
It's almost metaphysical, their crime. It's not like especially if you have a materialist view.
It's pretty fascinating, that attraction to me.
It's odd, yeah.
Yeah,
to say the least.
If I were in some kind of Vice documentary and I had to...
You will be, yeah.
Well, no, if I were the guy who's doing the interviews and, I'm in the editorial office and the Ian Weiss or whatever, he's like, well, you can interview one of the files. Which one would you choose? Like a pedophile? What are the other ones?
Cinephile.
I mean, that's it. This refile.
Obviously, there's like infinite amount of files, but you mean sexual files?
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. You put me on the spot here.
Well, there's gerontophile. That's also kind of interesting.
Gerontophile?
Well, that's I think the elderly. But again, like I don't really want to talk to pedophiles or gerontophiles or any of those people, because
you want to be fucked when you're dead, though. And I don't know how you could arrange this, but I'm sure you could. I don't think there's anything illegal about that. Well, so anyone listening, if they have a connection, we'll set that up.
Hit me up.
We'll make a dating app for you.
I mean, I find it fascinating as a thing, and it's obviously not something that has been particularly explored. Because they don't, it's weird because they don't really pose great threat to the living, which is why I would feel more comfortable talking to necrophiles.
Do they not, economically speaking, they don't kill people then fuck them? They only wait till they die naturally?
That's kind of a biggie, if they do kill, then so the necrophilia part is secondary to the murderer part.
It's swept under the rug.
Yeah.
Well, let's hope you're not murdered by that said necrophile.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I shouldn't have said any of that.
No, because
now attracting the wrong crowd.
Yeah, what's your address in Brooklyn?
No.
What part of Brooklyn, at least? Let's see.
I'll tell you the cemetery where I want to be buried, and they can stop me there. They can
go ahead.
Sit and wait.
The cemetery is?
The cemetery. Well, the one in Brooklyn.
Okay. I think I know exactly what you're talking about. I've been there. It's kind of a nice one. It's large.
It's so lovely. Yeah. There are ducks, I think.
Living ducks.
Well, some of them must be. I mean, that's a good question. Like, what happens to the cemetery ducks? Do they bury them in that cemetery? That's a good deal for the duck.
Yeah, they being the...
It's probably really expensive to get a spot there. It's like a big distance.
In Brooklyn? Of course.
Yeah, I mean, people go there for walks all the time. It's not just the gossip.
So in respect to, we're talking about you dying, but
right.
Surely you look forward to, are you working on any larger projects or things that, you'd like to do before you die?
Well, I mean, the suicide book was sort of like, well, if I do it in the book, maybe I won't have to think about it.
Maybe you won't die.
So far, still thinking about it. But
there's nothing wrong with thinking about suicide, though. I never understood this idea.
I agree with you. I find it really weird when people say they've never thought of it. I talked to, I think, my boss about it. He's like a tech person, and he's like, well, there's just, I got to build a company. It's like, oh, really? Is that it? So what was the question? Oh, yeah, my other projects. So, I mean, this one was really difficult emotionally and artistically, because, I sort of had to come up with a new style for it, and it's all done with screen tones digitally, but they're sort of used in a really unfinished painterly application. I don't know how to describe it, but I mean, I feel, as always, kind of looking back at my work, whatever, this was at best fine, but it does give me some comfort thinking, well, I did do something that I haven't seen anyone else do, so that's nice. But it was very difficult. So whatever I do next, I want it to be fun. I'm currently figuring out what it is. I have an idea for a more cool book, but I feel like it hasn't really coalesced in my mind, and it tends to take a very long time. So I think I want to do some really short stories. Just do explorations in different genres. Do something, I don't know, like a cyberpunk thing. Well, I mean, not that. Just try as many different things in short format as I can. And I want to do more animation that's kind of a little more flat. So I've been playing with Blender and thinking of, again, how I can do it in a way that's not overdone and obvious, and also just fun in the process. That's not tweaking some light source for hours, but more about just enjoying the chaos and all that. But there are so many things. I mean, I have like a backlog of notebooks with stories that I haven't deciphered, like beginnings of some novel and this and that. But yeah, I mean, honestly, it's just been hard to pick anything up. And that's the thing about big project, and you probably, I don't know if you feel the same or not, you can tell me. But when you have something like that, it's very comforting in that, you know, you know what to do tomorrow and the day after, and then it's over and you're like, fuck, back to the void. There is nothing.
Well, I love ritual and routine for sure.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know, like the void. I haven't gone to the void in some time. I think the void is primarily due to kind of narcissistic, like when you think about yourself, you tend to have problems. I think in any regards, I'm just realizing this, like I'm working on this art center, and I often do builds for other people, fabrication, even like logo work. And I think a lot of my problems just arose from thinking about myself, spending more time in it, thinking about something I wanted to do, whether that was comics or not. And it somehow just compounded neuroses and anxiety. And then I feel like when you focus on other people, you don't have the time to go into the void.
That's absolutely true.
But maybe there's something in the void. Like I'm not convenient about it, right? Like I've lost something. It's I don't think I'll have the luxury to enter the void for maybe decades. I look forward to going back there when I'm old. But in the present, I just feel like I have a responsibility outside of that void. I'm working on a comic now, but I haven't applied as much structure to it yet where I can be like, every day I have to do this. But I would agree with you that I think long-term structures are very valuable, and they're also valuable when you don't show them, because you start to build up that delayed gratification. And like that's why I barely use social media anymore. Is like I wanted to develop long distance runner muscles, not sprinter muscles. And Tumblr developed my ability to like make a drawing every day, and illustration as well. But like eventually you want to figure out something more substantial. And when you stop caring if people are looking at your shit every day, or you've gained financial independence from that practice, I think that opens up the door for much better work. And it's probably why I don't even know about anyone making comics under like 30, because I do feel pretty old in that scene, and I don't really care what they're doing.
Oh yeah, same.
And it's not because it's bad; it's because I don't.
It is bad.
Well, that's probably bad. No, it's just there's ideological things at play that I just don't really care about, and it's the new clout. It's the new way to signify some kind of importance, and it undermines the real art and the real struggle of just making something, I would say, transcendent. I don't know what language you would use, but propaganda is not transcendent by definition. It's digging its heels in. Yeah.
No, absolutely. I think that's kind of like, to me, that's the beauty of making something that makes someone else laugh. To me, that's like just the highest thing. For me, that's the transcendence, you know, or just having that like really direct emotional reaction. I mean, you know, the few times that I had any like very physical satisfaction from something I did would usually be when I would be doing a book reading or something. And then you say something and people laugh, and that's just like, you know, there's nothing like that. And I tried doing stand-up a few times, and the very few times when it went okay, it felt just unbelievably good, you know.
I was going to say, you should try to be a stand-up. That should be the next
I know, but I'm so fucking old.
Frontier. How old are you in Russian age? You're like a different species.
In Russian, I'm probably 90.
In Russian years.
In Russian years. Well, in Russian years, I would be dead right now. Or maybe I would cut off my arm, as people are doing. Yeah, I think I'm 36. I think turning 37 in a couple weeks or something like that. And I think people look at you if you're always already in that circle, and it's not a pleasant stare. And people say like, "Wow, if you're starting in comedy like after 30, you're just a complete fucking schmuck and loser." And of course, if you mean it and if you really want to do it, none of this matters, and you just go and do it. But the social aspect of it is kind of excruciating.
I run an open mic here, and we had three first-time comedians go up about a couple months ago, and it's incredible. It makes you really appreciate, because stand-up is so hard. It makes you appreciate.
Oh my God!
Even professionals who you don't think are funny. So I assure you, you're better than those three who went up. And if you ever want to do it here, that would be fun.
I mean, that's the thing. It's so reliant on the audience and so unpredictable.
Yeah.
And I think with the kind of stuff that we do, you can sit every day and you work on it. If you want to practice stand-up, you have to wait a couple hours in the evening to come up for 5 minutes, try it out, and then go to another place. Like the sheer amount of time you have to wait, or and if you have an audience through Twitter or something like that, like that's obviously better. But I think starting from ground zero is not ground zero, from nothing is a lot. But it feels good, man. But again, like I remember I wrote like a little thing, and I went and I did it, and it was just like completely regular crowd. It didn't seem like they would be, my people or whatever, but they just laughed at everything. It was amazing.
Really? Where was this?
And then, I don't remember, somewhere in the South. And then I think I did kind of the same thing. It was like, all right, I found something that works. Let's try this again and see, like, maybe I'll add like a different line here. It was like a couple minor changes, and I did a different place, and there was complete silence. And there's nothing worse. Like, you would much rather have someone telling you to fuck off. But
I think that's what's hard, is like the metric there. Yeah, like you don't know if it worked because the audience, or it didn't work because the audience. And I think that's something interesting.
How do you find out?
I don't think you can in like a strictly airtight way. It's definitely, I guess when you go to the top, it's probably funny to almost anyone within your language or culture. But then if you have like, my fiance tries to show me French comedy, even with subtitles, and it's just like, this isn't going to work, like, and vice versa. But
French humor is brutal.
I think what's interesting with your work, and I feel in mine, is sometimes it isn't clear when we're succeeding or failing with the comics. And I think the next thing I make, I'm going to try to have it a little more clear for myself when that happens. I might lose something in that process. It might be less personal, but I want to know, like, if it's working or not. And that's part of the frustration of...
How do you do that?
I don't know yet. I'm in the process, but I feel like my older comics, like, only with some distance from them could I say, because they're kind of poetic and obscure, could I say like, oh, this panel is wrong because I know I was trying to do or draw something more precise, even in its vagueness, and I failed. But no one knows that, and that's a little frustrating. I would rather be called out for failing even like a traditional narrative structure than hiding in the poetic, which I think I was guilty of at times.
Oh, same. I mean, massively. I mean, I did the thing that I find nowadays unbearable in other people's work, which is hiding behind other people's work.
How so?
Well,
Duchamp?
So much.
Who are you hiding behind?
Well, yeah, I mean, Duchamp is very original, actually. Like
your book, not him himself.
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, obviously, but my book is, it's like, it's very much it says nothing about the shop. It's kind of like a play on what you would expect from a biography, but it really subverts everything. And I think story-wise, I'm very happy with it. I think drawings are kind of like up and down, but it's definitely like my most, I think, complete and just quite weird book in that, nothing like, well, a lot of weird things happen, but, there's nothing like, well, there is something shocking. Okay. But, there's no necrophilia or whatever.
Not yet.
Well,
yeah.
Actually, there is. Well, hard to say. There's some dismemberment, but, it's not like graphic or whatever.
But you think it's a success, right? The book.
Well, certainly not in terms of sales, but or publishing it in America. Like, it's been rejected by every publisher here.
Really?
Which is, and they always say like the same thing, that there's just no way this can be marketed, because it's a book that presents itself as one thing, but then it's a different thing, but also not that. Like it does a lot of things that are very wrong. Like it
from a marketing perspective.
Well, from all perspectives, from cartooning, it's very much like, I think it will appeal to you if you like read a lot of comics and you're kind of tired of them, and if you like studied art history and you're over it. So, I mean, for myself, like there's a kind of distance from everything. But I think if you like read it as a straight book, like, oh, I'm gonna learn about this artist.
Yeah,
I'm just gonna be extremely disappointed. But it's like, and I think that's something that applies to a lot of Russian works, actually, because Russia is so late in its development. Well, with everything. So every Russian novel is about the idea of the novel. Like even the most mainstream Russian hits, like War and Peace, is not really a book about War and Peace, but it's like a book about what a book about War and Peace could be. And then, as early as Gogol, it's extremely postmodernist, before that word ever existed. I'm sorry, what was the original thing we were talking about?
I think I was talking about just success and failure and trying to develop metrics for that.
So I was saying, like, the thing that I really hate is when people kind of like base their whole personality around other people's work, which is completely natural thing that happens to everyone in their 80s, and I think that's something I did a lot in the beginning. Like, everything would be a little reference to this clever book or that clever book. And then, it's all like layered in this convoluted language, which again, I used because I wasn't confident in my English. I mean, I still am not, but I'm willing to like try and be bare and honest about it, rather than like inventing words to cover up my inability to write coherent sentences.
Yeah, I do tend to think of books and art objects as beings, and that I think of them as literally having a conversation. And if someone is constantly referencing the smart shit they read to you in a conversation, you're probably going to be like a bit put off. And I think it's, again, pretty natural early on to do that. And maybe it helped you get like these James Joyce book covers, which are nice, and embed you in a kind of literate
I mean, that
mode.
was such a fucking accident that I got into all of that. We went to Greece earlier, and I thought, wow, wouldn't it be incredibly pretentious to read Ulysses there? And I thought, well, actually, I haven't read it in a long time. Like, let's see if I still care. And I was kind of annoyed by most of it, I think part of it is because I've read so much about it, and like a lot of the mystery is gone. Like, obviously, no one can ever know what the hell he was thinking. But yeah, it no longer like really captivated me that much. And I think the books that really move me nowadays are the ones that kind of sneak up on you with an unexpected perspective or some weirdness, but that are on the surface like pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I love reading kind of stupid books, and I don't mean like Nelson DeMille on the beach, but I mean I like reading like I'll get into motivational things or just practical things about how to structure a day or something. And yeah, I don't know. There's like that idea from Philip K. Dick of the trash stratum, where like that's where you're going to find the real impactful ideas instead of these supposedly high places. But obviously, I think it's obvious that Dostoevsky or something, Joyce, there's plenty there, if not everything there.
Well, I mean, that's what I mean by being kind of a compulsive reader myself, in that like I really don't see any distinction in quality of language, you know. Like if I can derive as much joy from reading some kind of instant pot manual as I can from reading George.
That's the evolved snob form. Like you have to enter the initial snobbery is very selective, right? And then it evolves into a different type of selectivity
snobbery.
that is imperceivable to even the lower snobs, and they hold on to the fact that they don't listen to this pop song or that pop song or don't read this book, but they're stuck.
I mean, the thing that I really can't stand these days is that like the middle brow, the things that are kind of fine, like the very like accomplished, competent things that like I would much rather read something that is just failing completely than something that's like I can see all the mechanism and how it's supposed to make you feel this or that and blah blah blah.
Yeah, there's a real desire to be perceived as informed and intellectual in this age, and also artistic, and it's all rather nauseating. That's why I have the great pleasure of hanging out with almost
as a creative, you know.
Yeah, that's why I love where I live, where there is no one else really who makes art, or if they do. I mean, I have an identity, you know, it's I don't think you need more than one artist per village, if that.
No, I mean, that's the dream.
Oh, it can be yours. You just have to leave where you're at.
I cannot wait. Yeah.
So let me ask you one thing. Do you have a joke that you can tell me? Dory had many jokes. That's who you're following.
I mean,
I believe jokes are dying. The spirit of jokes are dying. Young kids don't even know them. Half the people who are our age are afraid to tell them. And so it's at a premium, and I still love jokes.
Yeah. No, they'll be like, is Donald Trump on the news? He's a bastard. You know? He's like a orange potato. And then there'll be like some other guy like, did you see John Kennedy on the news? That's how recent and up to date my references are.
I
think Kennedy is the next president.
But you wouldn't be wrong in that there are no jokes during Democratic presidencies. They somehow they suddenly stopped telling those jokes. It's very interesting to me.
When Trump appeared, people were like, this will be great for comedy and this will be great for art.
The worst.
Everyone will be angry. And I was like, no, some of the dumbest satire ever made has been, because like you can't top someone who is like so completely over the top.
It's true. You don't need to satirize the man. You don't need to.
Someone who's like in the middle, like David Cameron. He's just like this kind of pathetic, flaccid little man, you know. But when you have something that's like so extreme, like what can you possibly do here?
Yeah, you don't need to aestheticize it in a sense. But I still a joke.
I don't know if I know any jokes. I must have
used them all.
Let me see.
You could tell me a Russian joke. Can you tell me a joke? I like jokes that.
Oh my god! I'm going to tell you a terrible joke.
Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
I've been kind of like remembering Russian jokes that and they're so bad.
Let's go.
Trying to do something. Think of one that's not horrifically offensive right now.
No, I mean, if that's where it's got to go.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
you've provided context. It's a Russian joke.
Yeah, there's no concept of punching up or punching down in Russia. It's just pure violence all the time, omnidirectional.
It's just punching.
So yeah, I mean, genuinely. Okay, I remembered one. It's so bad.
Okay.
So, there's a man, right? And he drinks because, of course, he's always drunk.
Yeah.
And his wife is talking to some other wives, and she's like, "God damn it, Gennady." His name. He's such an alcoholic. He drinks all the time. And the other wife is like, "Do you know what? Maybe one night you can sort of put a little snake in his underpants." So then he wakes up and he sees a snake, and he's like, "Fuck's sake, I'm not drinking again. I don't know what happened, but there's a snake in my underpants." And the first woman was like, "All right, I'm going to try that." She gets a snake, she goes to a pet store, buys a snake, and then she comes in, the man comes home, dead drunk, he falls asleep, passes out, snoring, etc. She inserts a snake in his underpants, goes to sleep. Then the man wakes up in the morning. He goes for a morning piss. He's drunk a lot. He wants a piss. He takes out the snake instead of his penis. The snake has been sleeping through the night. It's completely fine. It has no interest that it's been placed in some drunk man's underpants. He takes out the snake and he sort of tries to piss with the snake. Well, the snake is just hissing, because it's being squeezed, doesn't know why it's sort of hoisted about toilet. And the man says, "Stop hissing and start pissing."
Wow.
That's the joke.
Well, that's that wordplay, that Russian wordplay.
The funny thing is that it doesn't rhyme in Russian. That's my artistic interpretation.
Well, thank you for that joke. I think we'll end it on that. It was good talking to you.
There's a great pleasure of extending the joke that has no payoff to the limit. Yeah. There's just something so satisfying about the disappointment of that.
I'm not disappointed. I liked it. It was very visual, very vivid.
Yeah. Well, you should try it at your open mic.
Yeah, you should come through. I'm going to call you and we'll have a real conversation about the idea we were discussing with the stage.
Right. With the necrophile.
Yeah.
Okay.
But until then, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Later.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. Music by Dori Bavarsky and Mingja Chen. Next week we have J.E. Sunday. Don't miss it.